Did you turn yours on?
I'm turning on now.
We're on? Is that on?
Yep, that's on.
Okay.
All right. Are we ready, ladies? Good morning. I'm Melissa Bryant, U.S. Army veteran. We lost an American hero this past weekend. We lost the conscience of Congress. He taught us to get into good trouble. And that is why we are gathered here today in front of the building in which he served for over 30 years to demonstrate justice for an American heroine, Specialist Vanessa Guillen. She served with her whole heart and dared to live the American dream, and her dream was brutally killed by another in our ranks. Enough is enough. We are here in support of the Guillen family, who have lost their daughter and sister. We are here today to say that her death was not in vain, and we want to thank the representatives that are standing here with us, Brownlee, Garcia, Loria, and so many others who are standing as allies with us today to bring attention to this grave injustice. The time to act is now to reform our military justice system. We must now use this opportunity to pass meaningful legislation that will remove unlawful command influence and bias from sexual assault and harassment crimes, influence and implicit bias which have plagued our military justice system relating to sex crimes and have discouraged women veterans and servicewomen from reporting these incidents, forced us into living in a daily hell, surrounded by those who intend harm and don't value our lives, and ultimately turned many of us into shells of human beings, often afraid to speak once we've become veterans and to seek help. Vanessa deserves better. We deserve better. And we thank the members standing here today and our allies who are committed to ensure that we do not lose another sister or brother who is a survivor of military sexual harassment, assault, or trauma. I want to thank everyone who is here today with us, and I will turn it over now to Representative Garcia. Excuse me, Spear. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that you walked up behind me, ma'am. Representative Spear, a woman who has been on the forefront of fighting for women like Vanessa for decades, the chair of the subcommittee for military personnel in the House Armed Services Committee. Thank you, Congresswoman Spear.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you to the Minority Veterans of America for holding this press conference and inviting me to participate. Hashtag I am Vanessa Guillen has become a rallying cry for survivors speaking out about sexual harassment and sexual assault that they've endured at the hands of their brothers and sisters in arms. Many are speaking out for the first time about the injustice and indignity not only of the abuse, but also of the military's failure to hold assailants and harassers accountable. Their experience speaks volumes and makes it clear that we must seize this watershed moment to usher in a movement that finally ends this scourge. Trista was in her first week of tech school when she went to a birthday party for a fellow airman, where she was drugged and sexually assaulted. Trista and her assailants all received the same punishments, a letter of reprimand in their files for underage drinking. Crystal joined the Navy at age 19. On her first deployment, she was repeatedly catcalled. When Crystal reported the sexual harassment to a SHARP official, she asked that it be kept confidential, but it was not honored. After the SHARP told her supervisor, the harassment got worse, and her commander told Crystal that she needed to grow up. We all know that sexual harassment is often the first act of someone who is a predator who's probing to move on to sexual assault. In Crystal's case, the abuse didn't stop with sexual harassment and instead turned physical. The sharp official discouraged her from reporting it, saying that she should ask herself, is it worth it? Crystal reported the assault anyway, but her assailant was given a slap on the wrist and was promoted. Tyler was an ordnance Marine who was newly open about his sexuality. A respected staff sergeant would tease him about it in front of other Marines, but also offered to be his mentor. The mentorship continued until the staff sergeant sexually assaulted Tyler. Tyler confided in a fellow Marine who suggested that Tyler keep his mouth shut about the incident because he thought the leadership would defend the staff sergeant while Tyler's career would be cut short. Tyler took the advice, kept silent, and ultimately switched to the Army. He adds that during his time in the military, he has seen zero tolerance for Marines and soldiers who failed drug tests and are quickly discharged. But service members who commit crimes of sexual assault get to finish their military careers unscathed. Vanessa Guillen told her family that she experienced sexual harassment by a superior, but did not have faith in the institution to file a report. The reason why she did not have faith in the institution to file a report is because we have data. And the data suggests if you are sexually assaulted, some 20,000 last year, only 5,000 will report. And of the 5,000 who will report, only 500 of those cases will be sent to a courts-martial. And of the 500 cases that are sent to a courts-martial, only 250 will be convicted. So retaliation is what everyone fears. And for those who join the military to make it a career, reporting is a career-ending act. She was recently told by a former Air National Guard colonel that sexual harassment was the price of admission for women, and said, if you're going to cry like a snowflake about it, you're going to pay the price. For years, we've thrown millions and millions and millions of dollars at this problem, and the results haven't changed. They have only gotten worse. 120,000 service members experienced sexual harassment in 2018. Fewer than 1% filed a complaint. Fear of retaliation. It's no wonder, given that the risks of retaliation are so great, that survivors see their own careers ruined while their perpetrators' careers are untouched. The military's approach has failed, an epic moral failure that is a stain on military leadership. The chorus of survivors in the military Me Too movement clarifies the moral imperative to act. The defense bill on the floor today includes an amendment that I authored to file confidential reports of sexual harassment and connect those reports to the military's Catch a Predator database. So survivors will know if their harasser has been reported by other service members. It also includes a separate amendment to require the General Accountability Office to examine the military's procedures for finding missing service members and compare them to procedures used by state and local enforcement and best practices. In the coming days, I intend to introduce a comprehensive bill to address how sexual harassment is handled, investigated, and prosecuted in the U.S. military. I commit to working with my colleagues, Representatives Garcia and Brownlee and Escobar and Philemon, and the rest of Congress to enact these sorely needed changes and to find justice for Vanessa Guillen. About 90 members of Congress supported my call for an independent Inspector General investigation of the Army's actions subsequent to Vanessa's disappearance and the command climate at Fort Hood. I expect to meet with the Army Criminal Investigation Division staff for an update later this week, and I invite my colleagues to join me. And next week we will have a hearing of the Military Personnel Subcommittee to conduct oversight on the military's response to harassment. And again, I invite my colleagues to join us. Vanessa and thousands like her cannot die or have their lives destroyed in vain. We must offer survivors justice while sending a strong message to the forces that harassment and assault will not be tolerated. We all are. I am Vanessa Guillen.
Good morning. My name is Lucy Delgadio. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I would like to deliver first in Spanish and then in English. Durante demasiado tiempo, nuestras voces no han sido escuchado. Yo no he tenido voz para tus 27 años. Hoy estamos aquí para darle una voz a Vanessa Guillen y para luchar para la justicia que ella y su familia merecen. Los latinos americanos somos fuertes. Ningún padre debe perder su hija por la injusticia del ejército militar de los Estados Unidos. Vanessa lo dio todo por proteger y servir. Como una madre, hija y veterana del ejército militar, yo no descansaré hasta que nosotros logramos justicia para nuestra Vanessa, su familia y todas las mujeres que esto le pasó. Gracias y que Dios lo bendiga. Too long have our voices gone unheard. I haven't had a voice for 27 years. We stand here today to give Vanessa Guillen and her family a voice and to get the justice that they deserve. The Latino culture is strong, but her parents should have never lost their daughter to the injustice of the country, of the military she swore to serve and protect. As a mother, as a daughter, and as a veteran of the United States Army, I will not rest until justice is served for Vanessa, for her family, and for all the unheard voices. Thank you and many blessings. At this time, I would like to bring up Representative Garcia.
My heart is with the Vanessa Guillen family. No family should ever, ever have to go through what they have endured the last couple of months. Vanessa Guillen was a 20-year-old soldier who went missing on April 22nd after being murdered at Fort Hood. It was always her dream to join the Army. Her father likes to tell the story that ever since she was 12, she told her daddy, of course in Spanish, "Yo me voy a escribir a los servicios militares," saying, "I will enlist in the military service." That was her dream. That dream was shattered because the Army failed to keep her safe. They could not keep her safe, which fails to meet the very basic bargain between the armed services and our young men and women who enlist. My office has been working directly with the Guillen family during the search, the investigation, the finding of the remains, and now as we await her return home for the final farewell. We joined Representative Spear and Senator Gillibrand in their request. 87 members of this Congress, 87, requesting an independent OIG investigation to make sure that we've investigated everything from top to bottom to make sure that this never ever happens again. I met with the Secretary of the Army a couple of weeks ago. He will recommend to the Department of Defense that we do that investigation. But now we'll wait for that secretary to make a decision. He also announced that he was naming an independent panel of experts to review everything that happened at Fort Hood, for the process, the culture, the command, the procedures that are used in sexual harassment cases. That panel should be named this week. But I can tell you here, just as Representative Spear has said, and I'm sure that Representative Brownlee will also say, we will not stop. We will continue to make sure that we continue investigating until we get to the bottom of the truth, working with the House Armed Services Committee, including Representative Spear's subcommittee, Ms. Brownlee's committee, Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and the dozens and dozens of colleagues who approach me almost on a daily basis wanting to do something. Because yes, as some of the veterans have said, enough is enough. Let's make one thing clear. The Army, when you join the Army, your command staff should not end up turning out to be your enemy. In Vanessa's case, she felt so unsafe that going to them to make any kind of report that she shared with her family, with her friends, any kind of report, she knew that she may receive harassment or retaliation. We know Vanessa's story is not unique, and it is time that we put a stop to this. This can never happen again. And to all the young people that have been marching, and to all of those across America and across the globe that have shared in the grief of this family and in the tragedy of this case, I tell you, we are listening. You have marched, you have protested, you've made signs, you stood in the heat, and we are listening. Congress will continue, and we will not stop until a complete, thorough investigation is done so that we can get to the bottom of this. We will get justice for Vanessa and her family. Y ahora unas cuantas palabras en español para los medios latinos. Yo no voy a parar de investigar este caso hasta que sepa la verdad. Voy a seguir trabajando con el Comité de las Fuerzas Armadas, la congresista Jackie Spear, la congresista Brownlee, los miembros de CHC y todos mis colegas que están con nosotros y quieren justicia para Vanessa Guillen y su familia. Quiero que esto sea claro. El alto comando de un soldado no debe de ser un enemigo. Pero en este caso, Vanessa no reportó sus experiencias de acoso sexual por miedo. Y ahora ella está muerta. Todos que sabemos que su historia no es única. Tenemos que ponerle fin a esto. Esto no puede pasar de nuevo. Y sé que el Congreso va a continuar supervisando y investigando este caso. Vamos a seguir hasta cuando ya completamos justicia para Vanessa y su familia. Gracias. Thank you all so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Julia Brownlee, and I sit on the Veteran Affairs Committee, and I chair the Women's Veterans Task Force. I stand here today in solidarity with my colleagues and women veterans who are demanding justice following the tragic murder of Specialist Vanessa Guillen. It is important that we bring all the voices together advocates, organizers, members of Congress who are working on these issues both in the military and veteran communities throughout America. As chairwoman of the Women's Veterans Task Force, one of the recurring concerns I hear about our nation's 2 million and growing women veterans is about the prevalence of sexual violence. We know that at least 1 in 4 women veterans experience sexual harassment and assault, providing VA benefits to survivors of military sexual trauma in 1992. Just as the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, and George Floyd have galvanized the Black Lives Matter movement and a reckoning with systemic racism in this country, now is when we say not one more regarding the systemic sexual violence in our military. Sexual violence should not be an occupational hazard due to your service to our country. It is a culture of misogyny, and it is killing service women and men alike. Not only do women in uniform experience violence at the hands of those who are supposed to have their back, but women veterans are twice as likely to die by suicide than women who have never served. Military sexual trauma survivors are also twice as likely to die by suicide. We must ensure that no service member, no survivor, or a veteran is ever left behind. That's why earlier this year, Congresswoman Spear and I introduced a bill, the Supporting Survivors of Military Sexual Trauma Act of 2020, which will improve collaboration between the Department of Defense and the Department of Veteran Affairs in providing resources for survivors. The bill will be included in this year's NDAA. VA provides high-quality health care to survivors of military sexual trauma, yet barriers still remain in accessing care. Sexual harassment is ubiquitous at the VA. Both 1 in 4 women veterans and 1 in 4 women veteran employees experience sexual harassment in healthcare settings throughout the VA. This is unacceptable. The agency responsible for providing health care and benefits to survivors of military sexual trauma is also the site of continued violence and trauma. This is unacceptable. And the worst part is that the VA has known about this problem for years. We have yet to see meaningful change or accountability. Last week, I joined House and Senate colleagues on a bipartisan letter urging Secretary Wilkie to act swiftly on implementing policies pertaining to addressing sexual harassment at the VA. Tomorrow, our committee will hold a hearing on this important topic. Not only does VA have a sexual harassment problem, but so far their capacity to respond is not visible and generally non-existent. When one of my staffers was sexually assaulted in a public space at the Washington, D.C. VA last year, she reported the incident to 4 different employees before police were called. Multiple employees saw the incident happen and did nothing. This must change. This is unacceptable. My bill, the Deborah Sampson Act, which passed the House in November, includes substantial provisions to eradicate sexual harassment and assault at the VA. Finally, despite their long history of service to our country, women's military service is constantly erased and questioned. Discussions about VA's motto have always been about culture. The current motto only includes male pronouns. When we call for changing the motto to be gender inclusive, we are saying that the service of every single veteran and their families and their caregivers and survivors must be acknowledged. Justice for women in uniform, such as Specialist Guillen, means cultural transformation and eradicating systems within the VA that condone and perpetuate sexual harassment and assault to a system that is uplifting the experiences of all who have served. Advocates like the incredible women veterans standing here today are essential partners in achieving equity for women veterans. We must especially listen to the voices of Black, Brown, and Indigenous women veterans who have proudly served our country in very large numbers. I just want to say to you, you are not invisible. We see you, we hear you, and we are committed to standing with you in our patriotic quest of achieving equity for all who bravely served this country. Thank you very much. Now, Miss
Gloria.
Oh, Miss Gloria. Miss Gloria.
Good morning. I'm Congresswoman Elaine Luria. I'm joined here by Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill. Both of us are Naval Academy graduates, both of us are veterans, and both of us want to see an end to what happened to Vanessa Guillen. We are better than this. We are better than this as mothers, allowing our children who want to serve our country to go into a place when they are in danger and their lives are at risk. We are better than this with women who live in fear of being able to confront their aggressors, and we must make a change. I'm proud to support the efforts of my colleagues. I serve under the leadership of Chairwoman Jackie Spear on the Military Personnel Subcommittee. I chair under the leadership of Chairman Takano on the Veterans Affairs Committee, where I chair the subcommittee for Disability Assistance and Memorial Affairs. And we continue to address these issues related to military sexual trauma and providing the resources and the benefits and the help that our veterans need who have suffered from this. But we must do more. We must stop it, and we must create a culture where this doesn't happen. And if it does, that people feel comfortable to come forward, to seek justice, to address their aggressors, and to get the help that they need. This year, in our defense bill, the NDAA, Chairwoman Spear introduced an amendment. This amendment would start a pilot program for women, for all midshipmen and cadets at the service academies. But really it's a pilot program to pilot an idea of a special prosecutor within the services. I served myself as a commanding officer, and last year when this very same amendment came forward, I opposed it. I was part of the problem, and I feel like I need to be part of the solution. I believe in the chain of command. I believe in the importance of the chain of command in the military, but we must do more. We must create an avenue to help keep women and victims safe, and I greatly appreciate Ms. Spear's continuous efforts, and I greatly appreciate that Representative Mikey Sherrill has joined me here. And for all the Service Academy women graduates who might be listening to this, we hear your voices. We know that there's a problem, and we will continue to work tirelessly to help make change. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lindsay Church. I'm the Executive Director of Minority Veterans of America. Here we are again, heartbroken and angry advocates standing here to talk about another servicewoman murdered after being sexually harassed or assaulted by a fellow service member. Another service member who did not feel comfortable or safe to report that she was being sexually harassed. Another life lost that could have and should have been prevented. Her name is Army Specialist Vanessa Guillen. I say is and not was because Vanessa Guillen will never leave us. Vanessa's name is a battle cry for thousands of tired and weary survivors. Her story has moved advocates to action as we recount the many military women's lives lost in unthinkable acts of violence in a system that does little to protect survivors and more to defend predators. When this happened to Lavina Johnson in 2005, they ruled it a suicide. When this happened to Gloria Davis in 2006, they labeled it a non-combatant related death. When this happened to Kamisha Block in 2007, they called it friendly fire. When this happened to Blanca Luna in 2008, they called it a suspicious incident. When this happened to Rihanna Dillard in 2006, they ruled the cause of death as undetermined. When this happened to Vanessa Guillen, her command said she was missing. She was missing for more than 2 months before they found her. In that 2 months, her killer roamed free, and her chain of command did little to nothing about it. When they said they didn't know what happened to her, what they really meant to say was they didn't care. Vanessa's life mattered. Vanessa's dreams of serving her country mattered. And Vanessa's family's cry for justice and change mattered. We stand here today to first and foremost demand that Congress open an investigation into the death of Specialist Vanessa Guillen. Vanessa's family deserves justice. They deserve answers. No family should be without answers after the death of a service member, especially not while stationed on American soil. We also stand here to demand change. This all too familiar nightmare must stop. How many service members have to die before we realize that commands can't investigate themselves? The military system of bringing offenders to justice is not just. Vanessa Guillen told her family that she was being sexually harassed by superiors but did not feel safe to report it. She didn't feel safe reporting her sexual harassment because reporting to a chain of command that has little to no regard for your life can be dangerous. In Vanessa Guillen's case, that fear was deadly. Legislation that would remove the chain of command from reporting structure for sexual harassment and assault have been talked about in Congress for too long. But this legislation could have saved Vanessa Guillen's life. The time to act is now. The military must have an option to report sexual assault and harassment outside of the chain of command now. Military service members must trust the system in which they are required to report. Without trust, this will never end. I wish I could stand here and say not one more Vanessa Guillen, but we already know that without change, there will be many more Vanessas. In the time since Vanessa went missing and now, we've already lost another service member. Airman First Class Natasha Aposhian, to the same type of violence that Vanessa suffered. This isn't a problem, it's an epidemic. It's a disruption to unit cohesion and a threat to our national security. The only way to end the epidemic is to face it head on. We demand accountability, we demand change, and we demand that if military leaders will not change willingly, that you find someone who will. We might be your past, but our community is your future, and we will not stop fighting. We will not rest until justice is served and our siblings in arms can serve their country without fear of sexual harassment, assault, and violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay, for those powerful words to conclude our speeches. As a former military intelligence officer, I know that I've failed women in my command. And I appreciate Representative Lauria's comments in reversing from your position last year, because we know we can and must do better. Thank you to Representative Spear, to Representative Takano, Representative Brownlee, Cheryl, Garcia. Your leadership truly will make things happen finally for women like Vanessa and for all of those that we have lost who have been survivors of sexual assault, harassment, or other traumas while serving in the military. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have. Leo.
What do you see as realistically changing in the short term that can make a lot of difference?
Right now, the changes that have been mentioned to military reform that are within the NDAA, again, thanks to the Congress members that are standing behind me, those are meaningful changes that will eventually bring forth removal of that undue and unlawful command influence that unfortunately creeps into our military justice system. Listen, a 28-year-old captain can't be expected to prosecute sex crimes. And it shouldn't be a responsibility of a 28-year-old. It should be someone within a special prosecuting chain, someone who can investigate these crimes with impartiality and objectivity and make sure that justice is brought to servicemen and women who have been harassed in the ranks. Any other questions for myself or for any of the members here? I'm sorry. Thank you very much then for braving the heat. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate you, Vanessa Guillen, and to your family. We love her, we support her, and we support you. Thank you.